Good morning. At least it is morning while I'm recording this. So this wasn't the face off that I thought I was going to be doing today, but the face off that I'm working on right now is a little bit trickier to decide who the winner is. So until I can determine which one is the winner of the face off I'm working on, I decided to put out this one because I've been thinking about this a lot actually. Hold on. Anyway, The Shining is considered one of the most iconic horror films of all time. The Haunting of Hill House, the most recent adaptation, a miniseries produced by Netflix, has just been released, but people really like this one. And there are similarities between the two. So that's why this says Face Off instead of Movie Face Off, because The Shining is a movie, but The Haunting of Hill House is a TV miniseries. And so I thought I'm still going to talk about these two and compare them, but this isn't going to be the same structured 5 round face off. This is really more of a general comparison. But I will determine which one I think is the better project. But bear with me throughout the rest of this video. So while there are obvious differences between the two, there's actually a lot of similarities. They're both based on a famous horror novel, The Shining and Haunting of Hill House. And there could be considered to be more loose adaptations than direct adaptations. A lot of the bare essentials of the Stanley Kubrick Shining film are from the book: the location of the Overlook Hotel, the main characters, the sort of things that do happen in the hotel. But the novel The Shining is a straight up supernatural ghost story. The Stanley Kubrick film, while there is some evidence to suggest that this is still a ghost story, there's a lot more that says this is really more of a psychological film. One that really sees what happens to a few individuals that are trapped in the same place for an extended period of time. Essentially, many people see this as more of a film about cabin fever. That's what happens to you when you're in the same place for an extended period of time. You sort of go crazy. So again, there is some evidence to suggest that this could still be a supernatural story, mainly with Danny and Dick Hallorann with shining or psychic abilities. But the movie really treads the line of, is this supernatural or is this just psychological? Are these ghosts or just cabin fever and possible mental illness in characters? Now, the Haunting of Hill House novel is very much the same way, never really explicitly saying if it's an actual supernatural story or if this is all just happening in the mind of the main character, Eleanor. The Netflix adaptation, simple answer is it's a supernatural ghost story. But it's more than that as well. Hold on. Yes, there are straight up ghosts in the Netflix series Haunting of Hill House, but the ghosts, as literal as they are also more figurative, symbolic ghosts. Because the whole series is really more of a story about past family trauma and what happens to the members of those families years later. What are their relationships like? How do they live their lives? What's happened to them? You've got one person that's profiting off the trauma that happened to them. You've got others that just simply deny that anything weird happened at all. And then you got others that has become a junkie and is struggling to try to remain sober. It's really more of a look at what happens to these people after such a traumatic incident in their lives. So really, the Stanley Kubrick Shining film is more like the Haunting of Hill House novel and the Haunting of Hill House Netflix miniseries is more like the Shining novel. It's a weird thing. Now, having said that, you can see how there's a lot of similarities between the two. I mean, Kubrick. Well, it is very similar. There are still differences between the two. Kubrick is a filmmaker that likes to take things slow, as you might say, like really make things uncomfortable, make them last in your mind. That's the kind of directing you're gonna get when the making of your film is from the guy that's made 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's gonna be slow, methodical, and he really is gonna know what he wants. Hell, like the actress that played Wendy in The Shining almost suffered from dehydration because he made her keep doing the same screaming scene over and over again. Now, the director of the Haunting Hill House Netflix series is from Mike Flanagan, and I don't want to say up and coming, but his reputation is getting pretty big. His other works include Hush, a horror movie that focuses on a woman who's deaf that's being hunted in her house by an intruder. Also includes the 2014 film Oculus about a haunted mirror that, again, sort of like The Shining, never really quite says whether or not it's all actually happening or if this is just all in their minds from a mental illness. And actually, Mike Flanagan has also directed the Stephen King adaptation, Gerald's Game, which came out last year and is considered really one of the best Stephen King adaptations. Which brings me to my next point, I guess. The Shining Kubrick film is considered one of the most iconic horror films and one of the best Stephen King adaptations. But it's not exactly considered one of the most faithful. This is really the one adaptation that Stephen King hates. And I can sort of understand why. I mean, yeah, the Shining novel is slow, but it's really more focused on the characters actually showing Jack Torrance in a more tragic character that slowly falls into madness, but in the last effort to save his family, saves him from being killed. The Kubrick film is much more focused on making you uncomfortable, on showing the terror of what is going on. The Haunting of Hill House, again, it could be argued whether or not this is a faithful adaptation. But yeah, I'm going to be on the side that this is still a faithful adaptation, showing what happens to people when they're exposed to this kind of environment and what happens to them. The novel just does it in a very short-term span, while the Netflix miniseries is more long-term. So for the most part, this is really based on your own personal preferences when it comes to horror. I mean, you want the Kubrick film that's slow, methodical, or you want the Haunting of Hill House, which is a little bit slow, but is also filled with a whole bunch of other stuff to keep you engaged and interested in the story as it goes along. Now, this is going to be a tough one, and I'm definitely going to get a lot of hate for this. I think I'm going to award this to the Haunting of Hill House Netflix show. And while some of it is pretty subjective, it boils down to this. The characters of the Netflix Haunting of Hill House show are emotionally complex characters that are engaging and interesting on multiple levels that you actually really connect with as the story goes along. The characters of the Shining film, not so much. Don't get me wrong. All of the actors in The Shining do great jobs. But the job of this movie is not to be focused on what happens to the characters over the long term in an emotional sense. It's to show in a psychological sense and to put emphasis on the terror and horror of what is going on. I mean, Jack Nicholson is a guy that's born to look scary 24/7, at least in his prime, which was around the time of this film. And while we do get a little hint of what these guys are like before they move into the hotel, it really just shows them always falling into like madness and like being scared. They're not really the most complex characters of any film. But again, you can argue that's not really the point of The Shining, which I can understand. But if I'm looking for a horror related piece of entertainment that's scary, but also really makes me get in contact with more of my emotions, including sadness, joy, and surprise, I'm going with The Haunting of Hill House because it does more, and while it's probably not as slow and terrifying as, say, The Shining, it works on more multiple levels that really exemplify what horror is supposed to be and what it's supposed to represent. Again, The Shining is iconic for a reason. I'm not denying that. But I just think as far as showing the full range of horror of what it can do and why it does it, The Haunting of Hill House is a better project. So that's who I'm declaring the winner of this face-off. Now again, I know I'm going to get a lot of hate, but I'm sticking with it. So comment down below, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.